This is why I stopped working in the Evergreen Hospital ICU. I got my job as a nurse in the Evergreen Hospital ICU department in 2014, and I worked from 11 a.m. till 2 a.m. for about $30 an hour under the entry-level salary. I worked there until 2019. I loved the job, and I met some great kids when I visited an ICU and the young ones department of our ICU, and I and some co-workers arranged Robert Downey Jr. to visit all the kids just to make them a little bit happier. This would be the last time they would see a celebrity. I had a son with my husband in 2017, and when he was 1.5 years old in 2018, he was diagnosed with leukemia and was hospitalized at the ICU that I worked at. I visited my son every day, and I always sung him to sleep when he asked. I cuddled with him because I knew he wouldn't be able to cuddle with his stuffies, his teddies, anymore because his body was too weak and inept. My shift ended in 2 hours, and it was a 12:27 a.m. when I suddenly heard screaming, "Everybody on the ground!" I immediately got down and crawled over to the ER reception desk, and there I found 2 masked gunmen standing in the lobby, yielding AR-15s and what looked like to be Colt M1911 9mm handguns, wearing bulletproof vests, padded jeans, with maybe 6 magazines for both guns on each person. "Hey, you!" one of them yelled. "Where is the pharmacy storage?" I froze. This was not an attack I expected. He was talking to me, asking for medications that I could not give. I thought of my son immediately, bolted down the corridor, but I fell as one of them fired and hit me in the elbow. An excruciating pain flowed through me as my head was filled with one thought, which was just my little boy, my son. I was filled with so many questions. What will they do to him? He loves watching crime shows with me, and what if he pretends I'm a cop and they kill him both and I, and then I heard footsteps. I said, "Where is the pharmacy?" His voice was slightly calmer, but demeaning enough to fill me with rage. "Come on, sweetheart, we know where your son is. Why don't you just give in?" What the fuck? How did they know who he was, and how did they even know him? How did they know me? The man unclipped his handgun and pressed it to the back of my head while I laid on my stomach with his leg on my back, and I could hear him breathing, but I couldn't focus, and I tell you, all that was in my mind was my son. The key is on my chain in my left pocket. Head straight for 2 intersections and take a left. Walk for a bit and you'll see a sign saying room 224. Put the key in and you'll have all the medications you need. He turned on his radio. "Let 3 out. Tell the officers we request food for the kids in here. They'll probably be starving now." I'm glad he at least had some moral compass to him, but what thought that was ran away with what he said next. "If they don't give us food in the next 20 minutes, we're shooting 15 hostages. He said that as if nothing I had ever thought of before. He was threatening the police with our lives just to feed kids that were already being fed. "Please let me go," I mustered to whisper. He got off and pointed his gun into the ceiling and shot who knows how many times, but it did what he wanted. I couldn't get up. I was in shock. The man walked away, and I knew it wouldn't be the last time I saw him. I ran over to my son's room and I saw a paper stating, "We know who you are. Don't slip up." I was mortified. My son was dead silent under his covers in the hospital bed, shivering when I looked at him. "Mom? Mummy?" Oh my God. I started bawling. I hugged my little boy in the way I'd never imagined I'd ever hugged anyone before. He was just so scared. I was with him until I heard a man again, and this time a different voice. "Ma'am?" His voice was fierce. I turned around and blacked out. When I woke up, I saw that SWAT officers were pulling me out of the room like a body. And when we got into the lobby, I regretted even being alive at all. I was a nurse at a psychiatric hospital back in 1995. In the summer of 95, after graduating from nursing school, I was hired at a nearby psychiatric hospital, which I'll call Dover's for privacy reasons. At the time, I was living in the New England area, and let me tell you something, the summers there were beautiful. Anyway, due to budget cuts and deplorable conditions, there were even rumours of several doctors performing lobotomies back in the 30s and 40s. Dover's was slated to close in September of that year. At the time of my hiring, though, most of the 500 patients living at the Dovers were either released or relocated to other hospitals, leaving about 100 patients behind with 17 staff members, including 3 doctors and 4 nurses, including myself. Now, Dovers itself was a grand hospital with its Gothic-style architecture, and while it was open, was the talk of the town, both good and bad. Dovers was located on the edge of town and was surrounded by very dense woods with only one road leading in and out. Built in 1870, it was originally intended to house 200 patients with the purpose of treating the criminally insane, mentally ill, and people suffering from TB in order to cure them. Unfortunately, though, over the years, as the population grew, overcrowding was a big issue, and by the 30s, there were upwards of 3,000 patients at the hospital at any given time. Soon, though, due to the overcrowdedness, lack of funding, and staff shortages, the hospital fell into disrepair. My job at the hospital was to watch over the remaining patients until they were relocated, about 2 months. As I previously mentioned before, there were 17 staff members left with a total of 5 floors being occupied. There were 3 doctors, 4 nurses, 2 CNAs, 4 security guards, 2 cooks, and 2 maintenance people left. We were left to live at the hospital with our sleeping quarters being on the first and second floor, while the patients were kept on the third and fourth floors. But somehow, though, there was a miscalculation with the rooms, and therefore I volunteered to sleep on the 5th floor where I would be alone, which didn't bother me at all. It was a Friday when I arrived, and since I didn't have to report to work until Monday, I had the weekend to myself. Now, Dover's had several floors in total, with the 5th, 6th, and 7th floor remaining unused after several patients died under mysterious circumstances back in the 70s. Of course, rumours were abound about the hospital being haunted, but at the time I didn't believe in the ghosts. After I met the other staff, I had dinner and decided to retire to my room. Now, the 5th floor had not been used for over 6 years, so you can imagine just how much dust had accumulated on everything. After cleaning my room, I took a shower and decided to turn in for the night. It was around 1 in the morning when something woke me from a deep sleep. Adjusting my eyes to the darkness, I saw a figure standing at the edge of my bed. It appeared to be a woman wearing one of those old-fashioned nurses' uniforms. I quickly turned on the lights and poof, the figure was gone. After tossing and turning for about an hour, I finally fell asleep, and the next morning after breakfast, I decided to explore the rest of the 5th floor. Using a flashlight, I wandered the halls, peering into each room as I walked by until I reached the now abandoned nurse's station. It was as if time stood still. There was a long forgotten coffee mug with coffee stains sitting on the counter, and all around the walls were old pictures of who I assumed were the nurses that used to live here. I studied the pictures well as I was curious about the previous staff that worked here. There was a picture that was taken during the Christmas of 1978, and I actually recognised Sue, not her real name, one of the nurses in the picture. I continued to explore the 5th floor until I began to feel sleepy. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the faint sound of a woman crying. Thinking it was one of my patients, I went to check it out. As I exited my room and entered the dark hallway, I noticed that the crying was getting louder. I began walking towards the nurse's station and stopped, as the crying seemed to be coming from somewhere in the back of the station. I nervously called out, "Hello?" but of course got no answer, and that's when I spotted it, a door I didn't notice earlier. I slowly walked over to the door and opened it and noticed how dark it was inside this room, so I started using my flashlight, scanned the room, and for a second I thought I saw a figure hunched over in the corner, and the crying abruptly stopped. Anyway, using my flashlight, I began to explore the office, and that's when I spotted the picture of Dr. Ryan, also not his real name. Dr. Ryan was one of the 3 doctors who remained behind at Dover's, and I had questions. It was the next day when I talked to Sue and asked her if any of the other nurses died here, and she said, as a matter of fact, a nurse that used to work here went missing about 17 years ago. It was rumoured that she was having an affair with one of the doctors and that she was also pregnant with his baby. Do you know who it was, the doctor, that she was having an affair with? Nope, I don't. But I had a feeling I knew who it was, though. The remaining months were here without incident, and that was until the last week before the hospital was to close. The morning started out normal, it was my day off, and I decided to go and get some breakfast, and as I was about to enter the elevator to go down to the first floor, it began to malfunction. Then from behind me, I heard the most blood-curdling wail, almost like someone in pain, sending shivers down my spine. I stood there in shock, unable to move. Somehow, though, I built up enough courage to turn around, and that's when I saw the ghost of a nurse gliding towards me. Unable to move, she approached me, and within a blink of an eye, she placed her hand which was somehow solid, on my shoulder, and then horrible images flashed before my eyes as I saw her being murdered. Then her killer, hiding her body somewhere on the 5th floor, and I saw who killed her. About an hour later, the hospital was bustling with police and forensic experts. I even saw them escorting Dr. Ryan out of the hospital in handcuffs. They had found Donna's remains behind the walls inside Dr. Ryan's old office. See, 17 years ago, Dr. Ryan, who was married, was having an affair with a nurse from the hospital, who I'll call Donna. Several months into the affair, Donna found out she was pregnant and threatened to tell Mrs. Ryan if he didn't divorce her. Scared his wife would leave him, he killed Donna in a fit of rage. After Dr. Ryan's arrest, I showed Sue the picture of Donna which I had found at the nurse's station, and she confirmed what I already knew. She was the nurse that went missing back in 1978. It was a few days after Dr. Ryan's arrest that the hospital closed its doors for the last time. As I exited the hospital, I felt a great sense of sadness, so I glanced up at the 5th floor one last time, and standing there at the window was Donna. I waved at her and she smiled at me, then vanished. At that moment, I felt a sense of calm. I often think about that time back in '95 and wonder if Donna finally found peace in the afterlife. You can't sleep either? Good. I wouldn't go to sleep right now, even if it was possible. I'm sharing all of this because I just don't know what else to do. Staying awake indefinitely is obviously not sustainable, but I'll fall off that cliff when I get there. I woke up in the middle of the night 2 nights ago to tapping on my windows. It's creepy enough to hear that while living alone, right? Yeah, well, I live in the 3rd story of an apartment and I have no balcony, so yeah. There's no point in calling the police because they can't arrest flying people or ghosts. I would undoubtedly be told that it was all in my head. So I wrapped the pillow around my ears and pulled a blanket over my head. It muffled most of the sound. The tapping instantly switched window to the other side of the room, like immediately, as though the person could teleport, or if there were 2 people. I didn't sleep that night. When the sun finally rose, I told myself that I'd had an hours-long series of fucked up dreams. I crawled out of bed, not wanting to look at the windows, but knowing that it would ease my mind when a smiling man wasn't hovering 30 feet off the ground. There was nothing but the street below. I breathed a sigh of relief. And then I looked up. The pane was covered in fingerprints. Most of them were concentrated around the latch, as though someone had been pushing in their fingers inside, trying to open it up. I dozed periodically at work. Every time I drifted off, though, I started dreaming of the tapping on the window, and I snapped awake. I told myself that I was going to sleep through the night last night. Hell, I was tired enough. I was out as soon as I hit the pillow. The tapping woke me instantly. I told myself that it was just a series of nightmares, but when it bounced from one window to the next and then back again within a 2-second span, enough adrenaline pumped through my chest to assure me that I was not in fact sleeping. I peeked an eye over the blanket. A long, pale finger was squeezing its way through the window panes. I leapt out of bed and slammed the window firmly shut. The finger pulled itself back outside. I didn't sleep that night either. Once again, I got braver with the morning light, and once again I checked the windows, and once again I regretted it. A streak of blood sat on the window pane, shining a dull red in the rising sun. I wanted to puke. I stumbled to my phone. Police could take a sample, right? As long as I had physical evidence, I could call. I looked down at the screen, and that's when I saw the blood on my finger. I raced to the bathroom to wash it off, disgusted that I'd gotten some of it on me after being so careful. I shoved my hand under the faucet, watching the red swirl down the drain. The blood didn't go away. That's because it was my finger that was bleeding, in the exact same place that I'd slammed the intruder's finger between the panes. I racked my brain trying to figure out how I could have gotten such a deep gash, but there's no other explanation. And now it's nighttime again, and I have nowhere else to go, because I have no friends in the city, and earning $19.13 an hour means I cannot afford a hotel. Typing it all up makes me feel slightly saner, even with an injured finger, because I have no one else to share it with. And I desperately want to distract myself from the knocking sounds outside my window right now.